This book has several jokes about mystery magazines where the cover doesn't match the story. Amusingly, the same is true of the book. The scene of a gorgeous woman protecting a secret by a corpse, that doesn't happen.
Argo Funk Book Review, Argo Funk Book Review.
Our main character is Johnny Saxon, a hard-boiled private eye who spent a few years writing pulp fiction. He's down on his luck until he gets a job from publisher Joe Rogers. Rogers is one of the nicest publishers around. He pays authors 1 cent per word. Let me tell you, I would love to get paid a cent per second for these YouTube videos. Roger just got 2 novelettes from Dulcy Dickens, the hottest romance author in the biz right now. She's coming to New York tonight. Rogers wants Johnny to meet Dulcy, treat her nicely, and get her to sign an exclusive contract. The problem is that Dulcy's usual publisher is the nasty Sam Sontag, who tries to destroy his competition through spying and stealing. His business partner is Jasper Ward, even more ruthless than Sontag. Dulcy is young and gorgeous, like a French watercolor painting. She's too innocent to know how much she's worth, and she has an annoying poodle named Kiki. Johnny sets Dulcy up in a fancy hotel, and he's just starting to get comfortable when the police arrest him for Sontag's murder. Yeah, Sontag was killed. They question him for hours. Johnny gives smart aleck responses to the police the entire time because he knows he's got a solid alibi. All he did in the victim's office was move a manuscript out of the reject pile. What a guy that Johnny is. While Johnny is being questioned, Dulcy is kidnapped. Both Ward and Rogers offer thousands of dollars if Johnny can find her again. Johnny investigates the victim's office. It turns out the victim picked this particular location because it's across from a clothing store, so he can spy on the women, and it's gross. It's disgusting. I am honestly surprised that a pervert like the victim never tried anything with his gorgeous secretary, Kay Lee. Kay falls hard for Johnny. It's love at first sight. She gives him alcohol and says suggestive things. They kiss passionately, and she says she can inspire him to write some news stories. Something tells me those stories might be too spicy for print. We meet Chick Clark, the angry accountant who doesn't want to pay Johnny. Johnny flirts with the switchboard operator, and it's official. Johnny flirts with basically every woman in this book. Anyway, the operator says Chick Clark was spying on the victim. A Baron von Ellman appears out of nowhere and offers $5,000 for Dulcy. Johnny has a low-level flunky chase the Baron, and he discovers the Baron has a used bookstore. Johnny might be a famous detective, but he's not a very good detective. Halfway through the book, he remembers that, oh yeah, Dulcy's suitcases are in his room. Yeah, it's an obvious clue he should have looked at earlier. He tries searching the suitcase, but he gets distracted by a random drunk woman and doesn't look at the suitcases again. Johnny decides to look for Dulcy in New Orleans instead, which is a terrible idea for multiple reasons. First off, he spends a lot of money. These are expensive phone calls and telegrams. Second off, she's not in New Orleans. She's in New York. You already know that, Johnny. Third, Johnny knows Dulcy Dickens isn't her real name. That's a pen name. So looking for Dickenses in New Orleans doesn't work at all. Johnny remembers that, oh yeah, Dulcy left luggage at the train station. That's an obvious clue he should have looked at earlier. He goes to pick it up, only someone else got to it first. The address they left behind is the local morgue, which is a pretty ominous sign. Johnny goes to Kay's personal apartments. They get so drunk they have trouble standing up, and they seduce each other the whole time. They have a conversation about the murder weapon, which is another angle that Johnny should have explored on his own. It turns out Dulcy sent the murder weapon to the victim's office as a Christmas present. Maybe Dulcy killed the victim and fake kidnapped herself to avoid prosecution. Johnny doesn't follow up on this possibility, because he's so drunk he doesn't remember it the next day. The chapter ends with an untimely interruption before Johnny and Kay engage in adult activities. By the time Johnny returns to Kay, she's asleep. Later, Johnny remembers that, oh yeah, Dulcy has a very loud dog. That's an obvious clue he should have looked at earlier. He runs a lost dog advertisement in the newspaper. At the very end of the book, someone calls and gives him the address of Dulcy and her dog. So if Johnny had looked into the dog at the start, he would have found Dulcy about a week sooner. It turns out the morgue is near the Baron's bookstore. Johnny goes there and reads a French romance. I have to say, Johnny does not strike me as the kind of guy who is fluent in French. Johnny purposely frightens the Baron to see what he'll do next. A good idea, but the Baron runs to the victim's building. Since half of the suspects work there, we can't rule anyone out. There's a subplot that gets a bit too much attention for my taste. Johnny's low-level flunky is Louis Hart, who is impulsive and angry. His greatest wish is to murder someone, like his gangster brother. I have no idea why Johnny keeps this kid around to do office work. He seems dangerous. Ward busts Louis's brother out of jail and pays him to kill Rogers. It's a double cross as he calls the police with a warning. Rogers survives by fluke chance, while the brother dies in a shootout. Louis is so furious, he bursts into Ward's office and tries to kill him. Ward shoots Louis, and Ward is arrested when he tries to flee the state. Another subplot I didn't care for was with Rogers, the good guy publisher. He's having an affair with his secretary. They started when his wife was put in a wheelchair, and I am sorry, but I can't see Rogers as a good guy in this situation. He cheated on his dying wife with his secretary. The wife made a miraculous recovery, and his life has been miserable ever since. Rogers gets a happy ending when the police expose his affair. His wife leaves him for good, so he can finally be with his secretary. Let's just hope she doesn't get sick, or he'll probably cheat on her too. As I said, I didn't like those subplots. It makes sense to give both publishers a subplot, but they felt too unconnected to the main story, especially since Johnny was mostly absent in those chapters. So it's about a third of the book spent on stuff that's unrelated to the murder and Dulcy's kidnapping. Johnny lures the culprit out of hiding by calling the victim's work and imitating the new boss. The culprit is the accountant. He was stealing money from the company, and he didn't want to get caught. It turns out Dulcy wasn't kidnapped. Kay was keeping her at an unspecified location the entire time. Johnny knows this because Kay's apartment had a plate with leftover fish. She said it was for her cat, but no cat leaves behind leftovers. Clearly, she wasn't feeding a cat, but a dog. Dulcy's dog! I'm not joking, that's the actual logic that Johnny uses. He knows Kay is a kidnapper because she had a plate with leftover fish. I think Johnny's been drinking too much. Kay hired Baron von Ellman to review Dulcy's writings. He discovered what Johnny suspected. They're phony. She can't write, she's just translating her grandfather's material from French into English. Everyone groans to learn that the famous novelist is a plagiarist. Johnny maybe groans a little more than everyone else, because that means he won't get paid. As it turns out, not all of Dulcy's works are plagiarized. Her grandfather wrote some unpublished novels. Johnny's got a soft spot for Dulcy, so he waits until she's back home before telling her the truth and setting her up with a real publisher. That's nice of him, and I'm legitimately surprised he didn't try using this as an opportunity to seduce her, considering the inappropriate thoughts he has about her in the last chapter. The end. Post-book follow-up. This book is pretty cliched. We have a hard-boiled detective in a trench coat who's constantly smoking and drinking while attracting shapely dames and fighting off murder attempts without much effort. There's snappy dialogue, wild gangsters, even 2 car chases. Since so much of this book deals with pulp fiction, I couldn't quite tell if the author was poking fun at the genre or not. There's a lot of jokes about the business, and the whole thing was pretty interesting since the pulp magazine business doesn't exist anymore. One running joke is Johnny making up titles for stories. He makes offhand comments like, "Geez, I'm going through hell on a Friday." Hell on Friday! That's a good name for a book! In fact, that was this book's original title. Neither title fits the book that well. Here's something weird. The sequel to this book is Murder is Forgetful, which was reprinted as Harlequin 114 under the title Johnny Saxon. The third book in the trilogy is Harlequin number 68, Queen City Murder Case. I have no idea why they printed book 3 before book 2. While Johnny is an interesting guy, he's a bad person. He treats everyone else like garbage most of the time. He only looks good in comparison to the murdering gangsters. He's especially mean to his partner Mo, who is a dope that serves as comedy relief. Pretty much every 1950 Harlequin book I've read so far contains casual racism and sexism. This book is no exception. Johnny makes a joke about the chief of police beating his wife. It's clearly not supposed to be taken as a serious comment, but holy crap! Wife beating is not something you should joke about, Johnny. As for racism, Ward has Filipino servants. Overall, the book interested me. I haven't read any 1940s detective magazines, so getting a glimpse at what they're like was a little bit of a treat. I'm guessing this was originally a serialized story, and there was no attempt at editing or rewriting it for publication in book format. Even though I liked this book enough to want to check out the other 2 books in the Johnny Saxon trilogy, there's no escaping the fact that the book is kind of trashy and needs work, much like its main character. I give Harlequin number 57, Murder Man, a 2 out of 10.